Important to let this moment pass us by.
Message and data rates may apply. You may receive up to 4 messages a month, and you may text STOP to stop.
This message furnished by the National Association of Broadcasters.
You have the choice, whether it's going out to dinner or ordering takeout at a local restaurant. Those choices help to put money back into your community. And Town Square Media South Jersey puts a spotlight on local restaurants.
La Fontana Coast, delicious, authentic, classic Italian cuisine, a block from the beach in Sea Isle City. And Yuri's Waterfront Restaurant at the foot of the bridge in Wildwood, where all-you-can-eat crabs are back.
Thank you for supporting these great local restaurants from Town Square Media, South Jersey.
Home of the Philadelphia Eagles.
They got him again!
Sixers.
Bang! It's good! Ball game!
And Flyers.
Tipped in front of the net!
97.3 ESPN. WENJ. WENJ HD. Millville, Atlantic City. A Town Square media station serving all of South Jersey. This is Game Night with Josh Hennig.
It's good!
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
And he scored!
Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio. Here's Josh Hennig.
It's another Friday edition of Game Night. Josh Hennig hanging out with you on 97.3 ESPN. Wow, we are getting ready for a very interesting weekend. Bad news for the Phillies. We'll get into all of that with the Phils and the latest with the injuries coming up in just a bit. Plus, the NHL Draft is saying the Flyers have already started to try and make moves to move up in the draft, get involved in the draft, and we'll get all the details on that with our Flyers Insider Kevin Durso coming up in less than 20 minutes from now. His latest articles on 97.3 ESPN.com previewing the NFL Draft tonight, as well as thoughts on Cam Atkinson, no longer a Philadelphia Flyer. What does that mean? Also, interesting comments from Darius. I'll try to get to some of those a little bit later in the hour as well. As always, you guys join the conversation at 609-403-0973, as well as your DMs into the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle. So let's get into the nitty-gritty here. We got to start with the Phillies because, well, after watching last night's game, if you are a Phillies fan, you are very worried because the way Bryce Harper came off the field limping last night, you had the sense, you had the feeling that things were not going to go well for him moving forward. And we found out today that it's official. The Phillies have placed Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber on the injured list, and they are going to be without two of the most important players on this team moving forward. And I have a couple specific thoughts on this. Number one, it's very obvious to me that this was what had to be done. It doesn't matter if Harper is going to be recovering in a week or two or not. Sometimes you have to protect the player from himself. Sometimes you have to put that player in a position where they are going to understand that you are doing what's in the best interests of them as well as the organization. I know Bryce Harper's a gamer. I know Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber are both going to be out there. But Harper with the hamstring issue, Schwarber with the groin issue. Schwarber left in the later innings. I believe it was around the 7th inning last night when he initially injured it. And then Harper sustained his injury in arguably the most inopportune time, which is the end of the game, on a play that he was trying to leg out and beat out at the end of the game. And it kind of gave you a little Ryan Howard vibes, but we are thankful to the Lord that it's not that. It's just a hamstring strain. And so this is now the third player with a hamstring issue in the Phillies this year. Trey Turner was out for 6 weeks. Cody Clemens was out for about 4 weeks. Cody Clemens now back with the Phillies after going on his rehab assignment. He is taking over in the interim without Harper on the lineup. And then Kyle Schwarber, he's been replaced by Johan Rojas. Rojas been hitting very well at AAA. So bringing him back made a lot of sense. But the problem with the Phillies now is no Schwarber, no Harper, no Real Muto. So how long do the Phillies wait before they are forced to make a move? Yes, they have an 8-game lead in the National League East over the Atlanta Braves, who lost last night to the Chicago White Sox. So both the Phillies and the Braves lost to teams they should have beat yesterday. But you look at the Phillies' schedule moving forward, and you realize that things are not necessarily going to get easier before the All-Star break. Because after this series with the Marlins, and again, last night with the game, you should have won 2 for 10 with runners in scoring position. Just an absolutely unacceptable loss, in my opinion, last night for this team. But now you got Sanchez tonight, Nola tomorrow, Suarez scheduled for Sunday. You got to find a way to win the next 3 games because you're going to go on a road trip that is going to test you immensely. 3 games in Chicago, 3 games in Atlanta. The Phillies have lost almost every one of their road series this year, aside from 3 of them. They have not been a great road team. And even though the Chicago Cubs are not one of the best teams in baseball, they are still a team not to be trifled with because of the fact that they actually have some good pitching. Now, their hitting is not great, but the Cubs are a team that has shown themselves to have some good pitching. You may not know this, but they're almost the opposite of the Diamondbacks. The Diamondbacks are one of the worst pitching staffs in all of baseball. The Cubs are top 15 in almost every important category for a pitching staff. Earned run average, batting average against, strikeouts per 9 innings. They actually have a good pitching staff. So it's not going to be an easy series when you go to Chicago and face them. And by the way, Imanaga, he has not pitched great recently, but he is a left-handed pitcher. And what do the Phillies struggle with right now? Left-handed pitchers. There's been a problem for them the entire season. So you got basically 2 pitchers at minimum for the Cubs who, in theory, should give you some problems, we'll call it, right? I know, again, Imanaga has struggled in recent games, but the Phillies have struggled against left-handed pitching, and he still has a 1.1 whip. Jameson Taillon is a very fascinating pitcher because he's got a 2.9 ERA this year, and he's one of those pitchers who is going to make you work. He's not a big strikeout guy. He gets a lot of ground balls, a lot of flyouts. So you're facing 2 of their better pitchers in this series. Then, after 3 games in Chicago, you got to go down to Atlanta and play the Braves. And you got on scheduled against the Braves, Max Fried and Lopez. So Fried and Lopez are 2 of the 3 pitchers in that series. And then the young pitcher, Schwellenbach, is the other one. So, again, difficult 6-game road trip, 3 in Chicago, 3 in Atlanta, and then you come home against the Los Angeles Dodgers. So, no Harper, no Schwarber, no Real Muto. It's time to put up or shut up for this team. And so, for the Philadelphia Phillies, you look at the lineup they're putting out there tonight. I don't know if this is going to be the everyday lineup for them moving forward, but it's obvious this team is coming out and telling you, we may not have our offense, but we're going to have our defense. Nick Castellanos is the DH tonight. They have put Brandon Marsh in right field, Whit Merrifield in left, and Rojas in center. They're keeping Bohm at third base, and they've now put in Cody Clemens at first. So at least against right-handed pitching, which is who they're facing tonight for the Marlins. By the way, another blob pitcher, Kyle Tyler. he's one of those guys who is a starter, and then they go to the bullpen kind of pitchers. Yeah, a bullpen game for the Marlins tonight. So, again, Marlins, not a good baseball team. You should have beat them last night, but you left too many runners left on base. The Marlins basically have one good pitcher on their entire staff. His name is Tanner Scott, and you allowed him to come in the 9th inning last night and shut you down because you couldn't get any runners in through the first 8 innings. They should have had 3 or 4 runs in the first 3 innings, but instead, the Phillies had trouble scoring more than 4 runs the entire game. The Marlins are bottom 5 in Major League Baseball in earned run average, quality starts, batting average against, and whip. And you had trouble beating them last night. This is put up or shut up time. You got to get this lineup out there, win these games coming up at all costs. Do whatever it takes. Change the lineup every day. I don't care. It's not like the Marlins are sending their best pitcher against you until Sunday, Chirinos, and that's Sunday. By then, you should have your lineup figured out. You've got to win these games coming up because I don't know how they're going to do on this road trip coming up. I know it's going to be a tough task. I know it's an uphill battle. But for the Phillies, they have to, absolutely must, find a way to win without their main guys. Because at the end of the day, if you're the Phillies, you got to maintain that lead. You got to get through the next several games. And if you want to walk into that Dodgers series at home starting July 9th without seceding a bunch of games to the Atlanta Braves, you got to take care of the Marlins next 3 games, and you got to go to Chicago and find a way to win a couple games. Because, like I said, 2 of the Braves' best pitchers, you're going to face them next weekend. So the next 3 games, this is must win 4 out of the next 6 games, or you could be going into that Dodgers series with a Braves team creeping up on you and cutting into that 8-game lead. Josh Hennig here on 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle. Don't forget today, seize the deal. SeizeTheDeal.com. Get a $50 gift certificate for just $25 to Romanelli's in Galloway. The deal is live right now at SeizeTheDeal.com. I got to tell you guys, Romanelli's in Galloway, they have incredible food. What a cool ambiance and atmosphere. I've been there to watch some Phillies games in the past. It's a cool environment, very chill, great food, great people, great service. Romanelli's in Galloway is this week's Seize the Deal. Get a $50 gift certificate for just $25. Just go to SeizeTheDeal.com right now. Before we hit the break, the other news that came out today when it comes to the Flyers, and the big reason why we're having Kevin Durso, our Flyers Insider from 97.3 ESPN.com, join me coming up next. The Flyers are moving on from Cam Atkinson. They are unloading a average annual value of $5.8 million off the salary cap. And this goes back to something that I had talked about earlier this week with Scott Laughlin from Sirius XM NHL Radio. Him and I were talking about, okay, now Mishkov is coming to America. What is the next move for Philadelphia? And I pointed specifically to Atkinson and Johansson have big salary cap numbers. Well, we know that in Tortorella's system, he likes multi-dimensional players. He likes two-way players, guys who are completely bought in to the type of offense to defense to offense transition game that Tortorella likes to play. Well, Cam Atkinson, you could argue, was a bit of a one-dimensional player. So you're bringing in Mishkov. You're going to be changing this team up. What does that mean for the draft tonight? What does that mean for the Flyers offseason? We'll ask our Flyers insider, Kevin Durso, coming up next. I'm Josh Hennig. This is Game Night on 97.3 ESPN, hanging out with you on a Friday night.
97.3 ESPN has teamed up with Seize the Deal for incredible weekly offers from some fantastic local restaurants. Here's this week's big deal.
Get a $50 gift card good for use at Romanelli's Garden Cafe in Galloway for just $25.
This great deal is on sale now at seizethedeal.com. Hurry, chances are this deal will sell quickly. For more info on this great deal, go to seizethedeal.com.
seizethedeal.com.
4th of July appliance savings are happening now at the Home Depot. Save up to $2,400 on select kitchen packages from brands like LG, America's most reliable line of appliances. Get the LG French door refrigerator with craft ice to keep your summer cool. Or upgrade to the LG Smart Top Load Washer with AI that selects optimal wash motions and settings. Get up to $2,400 off select kitchen packages at the Home Depot. How doers get more done. Pricing valid June 19th through July 10th, U.S. only. See store online for details. America's most reliable line of appliances per independent study.
If you're looking for the most epic place on earth, let's start at the base of a massive waterfall. Then trek through the thick jungle. Then climb to the peak of a snowy mountaintop. Then once you get there, keep going. Because with intelligent 4x4 and 7 drive modes and a Nissan Pathfinder, the search is the real adventure.
Available feature. Intelligent 4x4 cannot prevent collisions or provide enhanced traction in all conditions. Always monitor traffic and weather conditions.
Every success you've had began with a great opportunity. Now there's another one. At University of Maryland Global Campus, we provide no-cost digital resources in place of textbooks and most courses. And that's not all. You'll receive your accredited online education at an affordable tuition with a choice for more than 135 degree and certificate programs. With online and hybrid courses, get everything you need to succeed again. Learn more at umgc.edu. Certified to operate in Virginia by Chev.
Shop the Sherwin-Williams July holiday sale and get 30% off paints and stains from June 28th through July 8th. With prices starting at $34.29, it's the perfect time to transform your space with color. Whether you're looking to revamp your bedroom, living room, or home office, we have you covered with bold hues, soothing neutrals, and everything in between. Shop the sale online or visit your neighborhood Sherwin-Williams store. Retail sales only. Some exclusions apply. See store for details.
Home ownership. At Progressive, we know it's part of the American dream. It's majestic golden eagles and other less majestic birds taunting you through the baseball-sized hole in your new windows. It's soaring guitar solos performed through faulty wiring in your garage, which subsequently erupts into flames. It's also around-the-clock protection when you bundle your home and auto with Progressive, which can help keep the American dream of home ownership alive and kicking. Get a quote at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company, affiliates, and other insurers. Not available in all states.
It's time for July 4th doorbusters at Lowe's. Now through July 1st, save $900 on a Lowe's exclusive Hisense French door refrigerator. Was $18.99, now just $9.99. And get 3 for $10 on 10-pound bags of Royal Oak charcoal for all your summer barbecues. Shop these deals before they're gone, because Lowe's knows savings. Lowe's knows home improvement. Valid through 7/1. Appliance price includes all discounts while supplies last.
More than 200 members of Congress are standing up for AM radio listeners. The AM Radio for Every Vehicle Act will keep AM radio in cars, because when cell and internet services are down, this free service could be your only lifeline. Text AM to 52886 and tell Congress to pass this critical legislation now.
Message and data rates may apply. You may receive up to 4 messages a month, and you may text STOP to stop.
This message furnished by the National Association of Broadcasters.
Oh, yeah, it's on at Matt Blatt Nissan.
If you're currently stuck in a loan or lease, AJ the Trade Man can get you released. Matt Blatt Nissan.com. It's on at Matt Blatt Nissan on the Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township.
Powered by the all-new BetParks New Jersey Casino and Sportsbook app. BetParks.com. This is the Town Square, New Jersey Info and Weather Network.
Harper and Schwarber to the IL. I'm Nick Earnshaw with your South Jersey Sports Center and with your 97.3 ESPN question of the day. According to The Athletics' Matt Gell, both Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber are heading to the 10-day IL. With that being said, what is your concern level the Phillies can stay at the top of the standings with the injuries piling up? Let us know by texting 609-403-0973 or use the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. In my opinion, I think there should be a little bit of concern, but I think they'll be okay because also, according to Matt Gelb, they avoided significant time. They're not going to miss a ton of time. The injuries aren't as serious as people may have thought, so they're not going to miss a ton of time. And also, the All-Star break, there could be a buffer there for both Schwarber and Harper to come back. So I think they'll be okay. They just have to get through this little rut of injuries. Once again, text it at 609-403-0973. Your forecast is next.
From playtime to showtime, Atlantic City always serves classic summer fun with a twist of cool. Visit AtlanticCityNJ.com to win an overnight getaway.
From the Town Square, New Jersey Info and Weather Network, I'm Chief Meteorologist Dan Zarrow. Humidity will start creeping in again tonight. By this time tomorrow, the air will be thick and steamy and stifling again. Increasing clouds tonight, low of 66. Tomorrow, warm, more humid and breezy with a mix of clouds and sun, high of 83. Spotty rain should hold off until tomorrow night. Sunday, very humid with a few thunderstorms possible, high temperature around 90. Get weather 24/7 wherever you are. Download our free mobile app today.
It's a Jersey summer because the New Jersey Lottery has a new scratch-off with 6 New Jersey themes and prizes up to $500,000. From our diners to our pizza to the shore. Look for the tickets called It's a Jersey Thing and turn your Jersey pride into prizes. Anything can happen in Jersey.
This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
We'll check back in on the text board in a little bit at 609-403-0973. Your DMs into the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle. Joining us now, our Flyers insider, Kevin Durso. He is back from vacation just in time for all of this stuff going on, the NHL Draft tonight, the NHL offseason coming up, and Cam Atkinson bought out by the Flyers. Kevin, welcome back. How you doing today?
I'm doing well, Josh. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm not saying I'm the smartest guy in the world, but I did bring up the Cam Atkinson thing when I was talking with Scott Laughlin from Sirius XM on Monday, because my thought was, well, if Mishkov is coming to America, he's got to go somewhere on the roster, right? And this team, I'm not saying it's completely set, but they kind of already had an idea what they were moving forward, right? And Atkinson had a big cap number, and this made a lot of sense. So talk to the audience about how the Flyers got to this point with Atkinson and what is next.
Yeah, so you saw the way that Cam Atkinson kind of played down the stretch and how he was used down the stretch. He still played in 70 games last season, but wasn't very good in the second half of the season, struggled a lot, and started to become a healthy scratch down the stretch as well. So you started to see kind of the dominoes fall with this one, that there may not be a place for him. When you add in Mishkov as well, it gives you another winger on the roster, soon to be anyway. So you're going to bring, unless you were to make another trade of some kind down the road, you would be looking at a winger core that has Mishkov in it, along with Travis Konechny, Joel Farabee, Tyson Forrester, Owen Tippett. You start to see how many pieces are in place. And you got other guys too, like Scott Lawton and Noah Cates, who have played time on the wing as well. So you're starting to lose spots for a guy like Atkinson. The key here is that there was really not going to be, there's no option for Atkinson to pretty much be buried in the minors. He could have been, I guess, in theory, but the Flyers there's too much respect in the organization for Atkinson. Obviously, there's a long history with Atkinson and John Tortorella. You just wouldn't expect to see this. And it's also kind of a move that is for optics as well, that you don't want to take a veteran player like Atkinson and say, at this point, because of where you are in your career, we're just going to bury you in the minor leagues. It kind of may turn off potential free agents down the line.
Really
so
quick,
get ready. Yeah.
If I just ask you, because you mentioned about, the respect they have, is there any thought that maybe part of the reason why they also made this move? I just thought of this. Keith Jones, Danny Briere, former players, whereas maybe a non-former player might not have looked at Atkinson the same way?
Depending on how much they would have communicated with the coach, possibly if it was a non-player. But yes, the player factor does come into play a little bit. Danny Briere has been here before. Danny Briere got bought out by the Flyers toward the end of his playing career. So he knows what this is like. And that's why you saw the statement today from Briere about how it's a tough decision, because you have a lot of respect for the guy, especially coming back from an entire year missed due to injury. He tried to play through it. He tried to do his best to revitalize his career, and it may not happen here. And certainly that's the one thing. It's been a common sentiment, especially from people in the media circle who communicated and talked to Cam Atkinson a lot. He's a great guy, and you hope he lands on his feet somewhere. The Flyers tried to do something with him too. They tried to potentially trade him to get him to a new spot so that was an option, and maybe moved him along to a different team, and was probably best case scenario for both sides. They appeared to have a deal in place. There were reports out about a deal in place potentially with San Jose, but Atkinson has a modified no trade clause, so he does have a 10-team list that he could veto the trade. San Jose was on it. He vetoed the trade, so this was kind of the last resort option that they had to kind of go with. And it gives Atkinson a chance now to start fresh, to have a chance to go into the free agent pool and see where he ends up. I wouldn't be shocked if Columbus comes calling for him again and sees that they can't get him on something like a 1-year, $1 million deal, and see if he comes back to just try to bring his career back. He's very fond of Columbus, obviously, for how long he played there too. So it really was one of these things. Ultimately, they had to find a way to create cap space one way or another. They have 3 players on the roster that you can kind of make some assumptions about in this area. Atkinson was one. There was some talk about Cal Peterson. There was also talk about Ryan Johansson. The issue with Johansson is that he's an injured player at the moment, and you cannot buy out an injured player. So he kind of comes off of that list. Cal Peterson, they've already worked around kind of burying him in the minors to begin with. So that's one more year of that. And Atkinson really was the odd man out in this situation. So they get some cap relief. It's not, just to clarify on this too, it's not the entirety of the contract. So it's not $5.875 million that they get in cap space. They are still paying part of the buyout this year. So they will save $3.52 million for this offseason, and they will also have a $1.76 million cap hit toward the 2025-26 season to finish off the buyout, because that's how the structure of that would work. So it's a little bit of relief, and when you start to figure out where that money is going to go, it makes a lot of sense, because they still have restricted free agents they've got to sign. They have Igor Zamula and Bobby Brink, who do not have contracts for next year, and they've got to find room for Matvei Mishkov as well. And it's even more than just the roster spot. It's also the money. Even though it's going to come in at under $1 million like entry-level contracts do, they still have to find that cap space. And they were working with very limited amounts. Now they have some breathing room to be able to go out and maybe do what they need to do with some of their internal contracts.
So you mentioned about what they need to do this offseason. Okay, so yes, it gives them some relief. So what is a realistic expectation from the Flyers outside of the draft? Like, for example, is this a team that is going to potentially be in trade conversations? Is this a team that is going to be on the guys they have to re-sign already? You know, are they going to be active in free agency? Like, what is a realistic expectation for Flyer fans?
Well, I definitely think they're going to entertain the trade market, because of the fact that that's where some of the money that they have tied up can be moved. You think about players like Scott Lawton, who's been on the trade, you know, in trade discussions and trade rumors before, and he's got a $3 million cap hit that if a team has space would certainly take. You think about the idea, it's been brought up a few times about Joel Farabee's future. He's got a $5 million cap hit, but he's on the younger side. He's locked up for several years at this point. That's a contract that could be appealing to a team that's looking to make kind of one of those more true hockey trades where both sides get something that helps them in the here and now a little bit more. Those would be the types of things you would see more entertaining of. I don't expect them to be big players in free agency right now, just because they don't have a lot of the money. They really kind of have to sit on it until when you get to next offseason, when we can sit here and talk next year at this time about Cal Peterson's contract is up and that's gone. Ryan Johansson's contract is up and that's gone. And you can start to look into maybe a little bit more of that money. And maybe by that point too, we also factor in other trades that may happen. If they don't move Scott Lawton now, let's say, maybe that conversation comes back up at the trade deadline. Maybe that happens at that point. So they could have a lot more money going into next offseason, and that might be their time to really strike in the free agent market this offseason. If they do anything in free agency, it's probably doing things to kind of round out the roster. A perfect example is they've been in contact and kind of remained close to Eric Johnson, who they acquired at the trade deadline, about possibly bringing him back. You could see that happen possibly as a seventh defenseman option, kind of the Mark Stahl role from last year. And it would be a cheap contract probably for 1 year. And it would just be one of those things to fill out the roster. But I don't expect any big free agency splashes. If they're going to do anything that's on the bigger side of this, it's going to have to be through the trade market, where they can release a little bit more money in the process.
Talking with our Flyers Insider Kevin Durso, or his latest Flyers coverage over at 97.3 ESPN.com. NHL Draft coming up after the top of the hour for the NHL as a whole. Flyers have 2 first-round picks. We'll get to that in just a moment. I want to float to you the theory I gave Scott Laughlin earlier this week. I don't know if you heard it or not, but so Mishkov coming to America, right? You know, you want to play the Neil Diamond song, you can do that. But the idea being that, you know, this guy is coming to an entirely new environment. So the theory I put out there is, would it make sense for the Flyers to start loading up on Russians, right? You know, maybe a guy like Barabanov who played for years in Russia and then came to the NHL, or maybe a defenseman like Zadarov, or maybe trading for a guy like Buchnevich from the Blues, right? You know, these different guys who are out there, would it make sense for the Flyers to start loading up on Russians? So when Mishkov is playing for this team, that he has guys around him, you could be like, hey, this is America. This is the NHL.
So I don't know about loading up on multiples, but that idea is fair. And a perfect example, or a player I've seen his name out there a few times mentioned as not as a possibility, but kind of as an example of what this could be, was a few years back, the Flyers had Artem Anisimov on a player tryout, and he eventually played for the Phantoms for a while. There's a lot of people who think that would be the perfect kind of player to have in your system to be able to show Mishkov the ropes a little bit and what American life is like, especially for some, and kind of to combine it too. If you can find, might be a little bit harder to do, but if you can find a player who also has a background with Tortorella as well, because Anisimov did when he showed up,
right,
that would also help, because then you have all avenues covered. You have, here's how you adjust to North America, here's how the NHL works, here's how this coach operates. It would be a lot of that, and that might be certainly that's an idea that would make a lot of sense if the Flyers go for that. Maybe, you know, maybe kind of turning it away, because I know part of the conversation we're going to get into is loading up on Russians, maybe from the younger side of things that they've kind of leaned towards a little bit more over the years. But certainly a veteran presence like that would make a lot of sense. And I mean, you can kind of already pull a few guys who could help in this process. Igor Zamula is a good example of bringing him back. He's been around in North America at least for several years at this point. So maybe he's a guy that you could pair up with Mishkov just in terms of the lifestyle approach and see if he can lend a hand here in this. But if you really want to go into that, you know, you brought up a few really good examples there about guys who have a lot of experience under their belts. And that might be, having one of those guys might make a huge difference if you can find a way to pull it off with everything else that goes into building your roster in the offseason.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the reason why I bring up the guys that I brought up is because they're not big names. Like, they're not the most expensive guys. You know, like Barabanov is, I mean, he had like an okay year with the Sharks, but I mean, like I said, he was in the KHL for almost a decade before he came to America. So it's like, that's why a guy like him, I'm thinking in my mind, I'm like, well, this dude's seen both sides of the fence, you know?
And he's probably a better example of it. Like when you brought up Buchnevich, I know Buchnevich had a bigger contract in recent years, so that might be a little bit tougher to do. But Barabanov's a good example of it. Yeah, especially a guy who hasn't maybe really found his permanent place yet. I mean, he played for San Jose for a good chunk of years, and that's one location, obviously, where he had settled in a little bit. But you start to see, especially when you look at where San Jose is too, it starts to create a shuffle of guys who end up in a bunch of different places until they find their footing. Zadorov's been the same way. He's been through so many different teams that kind of have to go through that building process. So he's bounced around a little bit. And, you know, now I certainly understand where you're coming from with that one, especially now that it's confirmed he's going to market. So that's another kind of factor that plays in.
Yeah, I did a little research, Kevin. I did a little research on this. I literally started looking up Russians who were free agents and who could be on the trade. This was me at 2:00 in the morning a few days ago. So I mean, you know, this is why I don't get enough sleep at times. But you know how it is. You start going on the rabbit hole.
I can relate.
Like, oh, what about this guy?
Yeah, I can relate. Absolutely.
You mentioned the draft. Let's hit on that. So first of all, give the audience an update, because they do have 2 first-round picks. There's a lot of talk they could try to move up in the draft. Are the Flyers, in your eyes, still trying to move up, or is that ship sailed?
No, I think they're still trying, and they're trying in different ways. So in terms of, you know, the report was obviously out yesterday about them trying to get up to 4th overall. That is going to be a challenge. It's trying to jump as many spots as they would have to. It's going to be a challenge. It's obvious that if they were going to go that high, they have their eye on somebody. There's 2 names that have been kind of lingering around that. So obviously the first one is the Russian forward, Ivan Demidov, who personally, I think is the second best prospect in the draft behind Macklin Celebrini, who's going to go first overall to San Jose. I don't know if everybody else sees it that way. There's there's no consensus about 2 through 15, let's just say. So there's really all sorts of possibilities, and that kind of creates an intriguing night for, from Danny Briere's perspective, because you don't know how it's going to break. So is getting up to 4 that important? It might be if you want Demidov or another prospect who, they're looking for young centers. Obviously, they need some centers in the pipeline, and Caden Lindstrom would be probably the target if they went center there beyond Demidov, who's a winger. So again, you would kind of continue to crowd the wing a little bit if you went Demidov, whereas you could get a center there as well. If it doesn't work out for 4, though, don't rule out the possibility that they're going to call on 6, 7, 8. Like they'll talk to just about any team who's sitting in the top 10 right now to try to figure out a way to get in there for who knows who they're looking at, honestly, because there's so many different ways the board could play out. And maybe the difference, honestly, is that if you wait it out a little bit and you get to around the 6th pick and you see that player that you thought you needed to get to 6 for is still there as 7 comes and 8 comes, maybe you just need to jump 2 or 3 spots to get the player you really want. So you kind of have to play that waiting game. I liken it a little bit to the Mishkov approach from last year's draft, because there was a lot of talk about how if the Flyers really wanted him, they were going to have to move 7 to 5, and then it didn't happen that way. Mishkov was still there when 7 rolled around, and they just had to play the waiting game and wait for the player to fall to them right into their laps. Maybe that's the way that it goes too. I highly doubt that they're going to trade down from 12 unless they really have their eyes on a player that they feel is going to still be there 2 picks later and really are that confident about it. The area where I think they actually could trade down is 32nd. I think that because that is a borderline 2nd round pick at this point, that there's a big opportunity there. You don't have certainty yet. You made a trade last offseason that brought in a 2nd rounder from Columbus that had a condition on it. Columbus gets to decide up to 1 hour after the draft tonight, after the 1st round, whether or not they have the 36th overall pick or they give it to the Flyers. And if they don't give it to the Flyers, then it gets deferred to 2025. And if that's the case, so you kind of lose leverage there too. If you had 36 and you knew you had it, you might be able to actually play with 32, 36 and see if you can get into the 20s again. Because you don't have it, I wonder if you take 32 and see about getting back into the 2nd round that way, and maybe adding another pick in the process as well, and you really start to bulk up on assets and kind of those poker chips that you have, no pun intended, since the draft is in Vegas, but poker chips that you have to try to get somebody in the mid rounds maybe that you can discover and kind of unlock a talent that turns out to be a key part of your future when nobody really was expecting it.
That's a good move by you, going the Vegas reference there. By the way, I gotta say, the logo of the draft on the sphere is probably one of the coolest things I've ever seen.
It's a really cool setup.
It's of any sporting anything I've ever seen. Like, that sphere is ridiculous. What they can do with the graphics, only just the outside of the building, let alone the inside of the building. Couple more for our Flyers insider Kevin Durso. All of his Flyers coverage over at 973 ESPN.com. Follow him on Twitter X for all your Flyers coverage at Kevin_Durso. So you mentioned a lot of options of trading up. Just big picture on this draft. Is this the kind of draft? Because I always tell people, now this is just my opinion, hockey and baseball drafts are similar. And that is, you have guys that need to develop, and then you have guys who are going to get fast-tracked. And they're not all in the same category. It's not like the NFL where it's like, this guy's playing next year. Like, there's a lot of times these guys need a year or 2 at times for just to get them, into the flow of the system. So for this draft, for you, does it make sense to get into the top 10? Like, is there a differentiation between the player at 6 and at 12, or is there not a huge gap there?
There's not a huge gap, but it depends on what their list looks like compared to others. Probably that's the way it's going to really break down. I can understand the drive to try to get into the top 5, because that would be a player that is borderline. It's kind of in that territory where these top 5 picks are still going to be highly, like, we'll look back in 5 years at the top 5 and try to figure out who made it, who didn't. It's similarly to the way that in 2017, Nolan Patrick was kind of the one guy out of the top 5 that didn't pan out, and everybody else did.
You had to bring up the worst example, Kevin.
I know. I did have to. But there's a lot of other guys, like, you can sit there and look, and as the board shapes out, maybe they don't feel like they need to do anything, and they'll know they get somebody that is projected around 12, or maybe again, you explore the trade market a little bit differently over the course of, as it gets closer to 12, maybe at 8, 9, 10 range. It's a little bit tougher to talk about from 11 because 11 was just acquired by San Jose. So maybe clearly they have their eyes on somebody, and that's why they went ahead and made that move to go 3 spots ahead of where they previously were with their second first-round pick of this draft. In the Flyers case, because that is your highest pick, I think you're just looking at, I think it was quite apparent they were looking at one of these 2 players that are very likely to be gone by the time their pick comes, and both in Demidov and Lindstrom. And maybe even you could throw in a guy like Tija Ginla, who is also kind of climbing the draft chart rapidly. And obviously he's got a good pedigree being the son of Jerome Ginla, a Hall of Famer, but he's climbed the chart so quickly that I think there's a wonder if he even makes it past 5 as well. And maybe that's a guy they would look at as well. But otherwise, I think that the rest of the draft, you start to see all of these guys pop up in different positions when you look at different mock drafts and different ranking boards and things like that. So the hard part with this is that as much as we can all speculate on who's going to be there, or who we would like to be there, or who we think is the best fit, this is, if Danny Briere was, as a player, Danny Briere was Mr. Playoffs, and he was always at his best when the playoffs rolled around. Well, this is his playoffs right now, and this is the scouting department's playoffs, where you go into this thing and you better be right after doing all your homework for the entire year about who you bring in and what decision you make, whether it is move up, move back, what position you select from. Obviously, they have needs for centers, and there's always need for defensemen. They have an abundance of wingers, but what if you can go and get a winger who has a great talent level, who you think can really help your team and be a big scorer or playmaker for you? You have to factor all of that in and kind of determine who you think is going to give you the best chance to succeed in the long term. And that's why we go to all different positions. They don't really have a guy on the roster who is a clear-cut number 1 defenseman. They're very thin at center, and now that Mishkov's coming over sooner than expected, you start to look at options that will give you a center that you maybe eventually can pair with them to be part of your main core group at forward here. Or maybe it's another winger who you add to your special teams and add to your top 6, and you can say, this guy's a goal scorer, let's go put him out there too. And we got 2 guys who are on the wing, and now we just need to find the center eventually. It all kind of comes into play, and you have to figure out the different methods that work for you. And mostly you just have to wait and see. That's kind of the big strategy here, is wait and see how the board plays out, especially in a draft like this, where it's really hard. I don't remember too many drafts like this where it feels like there hasn't been kind of a close to consensus of the order that things are going to go or where guys roughly rank. It's really all over the place, and that makes it a little bit harder to forecast.
We'll keep in touch with Kevin Durso, our Flyers insider from 97.3 ESPN.com. Following him on Twitter, at Kevin_Durso. As Kevin, I'm very fast as Flyers offseason. I am very curious to see what is next for Briere, Jones, and company, because with Mishkov coming to America, I think it changes a lot of the conversation for next year. And it's very possible that, listen, I asked the question, and Mike Gill kind of looked at me like a sideways look, but I'll ask it to you really quick. Who gets deeper in the postseason next year, the Flyers or the Sixers?
To be honest, I would probably still put my money on the Sixers in that one.
Sure
just
about
because
that?
I think, yeah, because to me, I don't know how much more they can add beyond getting Mishkov now. Mishkov coming over is great. I think it gives you a huge entertainment value that makes people want to watch every night. And, who knows, at this time next year, if Mishkov comes over and really hits it off from the beginning, when award season rolls around, he might be in a conversation. That's a very distinct possibility if his talent translates super quick and he has a really strong rookie season. The Flyers have never had a Calder Trophy winner in their history, and there's always the possibility when you have a player of his.
By the way,
it is insane. The most recent one that I can think of, the most recent that they've come closest with, was Shane Gostisbehere, I believe, because he was a finalist in 2015. He lost out to Artemi Panarin, which was kind of a little bit of a controversial one at that point, because Panarin had played pro in the KHL for several years. So he kind of came over already groomed a little bit for professional hockey, as opposed to Gostisbehere, who had come out of college a year or 2 prior and is like, okay, tearing it up in the NHL already in that first year that he had. But if you could get somebody like that, I think we could be having that conversation with Mishkov. The hard part is I don't know how much else of the roster is changing just yet. If they go out and do a whole bunch of stuff over the next 5 to 6 days and make a few trades and all of a sudden kind of transform this roster, then sure, there's always a possibility. But for the most part, I feel like you're going to see a lot more running it back to kind of get to next offseason and be ready to go with a lot more money in hand when that time rolls around, as opposed to this offseason where you're going to have a few things that need to be ironed out, and it's going to take a little bit of time. So I don't know if I'm that quick to go, yeah, they'll make the playoffs. They'll go that far in the playoffs, but they're on the right track knowing they've got Mishkov coming over and that they have some options with money coming off the books pretty soon.
Kevin, appreciate you jumping on today. Enjoy the draft in the weekend. I'm sure we'll be talking often over the coming weeks about the Flyers.
Absolutely. Thanks, Josh.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank. See Alchik back in the text board coming up aside before we wrap up the Power Hour, known as Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Josh Hennig hanging out with you on a Friday night.
Saturday morning in the locker room with Billy Schwein, producer Nick Earnshaw, and Mike Carlin join me in the studio. Hour one, we'll talk with the Phillies 2023 first-round draft pick, now with the Jersey Shore Blue Claws, Aiden Miller. Hour two, we'll talk about the Sixers draft picks. Next, it's the Beach Patrol report with Jack Brooks, brought to you by McCann Realtors of Seattle City and the Ocean City Beach Patrol Lifeguard Alumni Association. This week, we will hear from the chief of the Longport Beach Patrol, Tom Krebs. It's the locker room with Billy Schwein, Saturday morning from 10 a.m. to noon on 97.3 ESPN.
Take $7,500 off MSRP or pay 0% for 60 months and make no payments until after Labor Day during the Kia Summer Sticker Sales Event.
It's gotta be a Matt Blatt Kia.
You heard right. Take $7,500 off MSRP on every clearly marked EV in stock. Have a job clearing $450 per week? Matt Blatt Kia wants to approve you today with 0 down and 0 payments until after Labor Day on every new Matt Blatt Kia in stock. Plus, with our 4-day love it or leave it return policy, you can drive with peace of mind. So if you're currently stuck in a loan or lease, we want to get you released.
It's gotta be a Matt Blatt Kia.
With approved credit, 24 Nero EV and EV6, 1667 per thousand. Not all will qualify. Credit may affect down payments. Offers can't be combined. Go to MattBlattKiaNJ.com for complete details or 888-505-6670. Price includes all costs to be paid by consumer, except for licensing, registration, and taxes through KMF. $7,500 off from $7,500 customer cash. EV6 rebates and incentives to dealer. Matt Blatt Kia, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township, and on Route 37 in Toms River.
I'm Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I learned about atrial fibrillation the hard way. My symptoms would come and go. Shortness of breath, fatigue. I kept going. Then I got so lightheaded, I couldn't. My doctor said I have AFib, so I'm about 5 times more likely to have a stroke. Other symptoms, irregular heartbeat, heart racing, chest pain can come and go, but the risk of stroke stays. If you have symptoms, tell a doctor. Visit notimetowait.com.
Sponsored by Bristol-Myers Squibb and Pfizer.
She posted about us just now.
Celebrities can't get enough of Biana's bespoke skincare line.
She has 147 million followers. How do we monetize?
She needs a social media associate to help her with the hype.
We should repost this. Do we need a hashtag?
Indeed can help her hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. You can schedule and conduct virtual interviews all from your employer dashboard. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Broken bricks, falling fences, damaged doors, Gorilla Glue. Of course. It's incredibly strong and 100% waterproof and bonds, well, virtually everything. While you're at it, look for Gorilla Tape, a heavy-duty double-thick duct tape, and Gorilla Super Glue, great for all your quick fixes and repairs. There's also Gorilla Epoxy, Gorilla Wood Glue, Gorilla Construction Adhesive. Of course. You get it. If you can break it, Gorilla can fix it. For the toughest jobs on planet Earth.
My mom was so tired all the time. And anytime I told her a problem, she always had one solution. She'd be like, you should take a nap. Both my wrists could be cut, and I could be holding a knife. And I could be like, I don't want to be here! And she'd be like, have you slept?
From Saturday Night Live, his Netflix specials, and Peacock's Bupkis, Pete Davidson Prehab Tour. Saturday, July 20th, Ovation Hall and Ocean Casino Resort. Tickets on sale now at theoceanac.com. Pete Davidson Prehab Tour, live.
4th of July appliance savings are happening now at the Home Depot. Save up to $2,400 on select kitchen packages from brands like LG, America's most reliable line of appliances. Get the LG French door refrigerator with craft ice to keep your summer cool. Or upgrade to the LG Smart Top Load Washer with AI that selects optimal wash motions and settings. Get up to $2,400 off select kitchen packages at the Home Depot. How doers get more done. Pricing valid June 19th through July 10th, U.S. only. See store online for details. America's most reliable line of appliances per independent study.
Find what you love, love what you find. A Total Wine and More. There's so much waiting for you. Spirits and beer, thousands of wines. Guides in the know when price is so low, it just might blow your mind. You're gonna find what you love and love what you find.
Only at Total Wine & More. Drink responsibly. Be 21.
Get in zone, AutoZone.
Welcome to AutoZone. What are you working on today? Dead battery on America's birthday? America's #1 battery destination is here to help. AutoZone has free battery testing and charging at every store, and batteries starting at just $79.99. With our 4th of July sale, we have savings to help you red, white, and do any other jobs you've been putting off. It's everything you need to get back on the road at AutoZone.
Get in zone, AutoZone.
Restrictions apply.
You have the choice, whether it's going out to dinner or ordering takeout at a local restaurant. Those choices help to put money back into your community. And Town Square Media South Jersey puts a spotlight on local restaurants.
JoJo's Italian Grill, Egg Harbor Township. Every dish is made with passion and the freshest ingredients. Vincenzo's Ristorante, a delectable Italian meal in Galloway. VincenzoSmithville.com. Chico and Sons in Northfield, voted #1 sub shop in South Jersey. ChicoandSons.com.
Thank you for supporting these great local restaurants from Town Square Media, South Jersey.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and on the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City.
All right, before we get out of here, a couple of news items I want to hit on. First of all, Phillies are still 0-0 in the top of the third inning. They had a runner in scoring position the second inning, couldn't get the job done. I mean, it is absolutely ridiculous that this team, by the way, great defensive play by the Phillies there to get the double play there. But I got to tell you guys, I don't understand this team. I told you, the Marlins have one of the worst pitching staffs in baseball, and you can't beat them? You can't score runs when they're 90 feet away? I mean, come on, man. Come on, man. Just ridiculous. NBA news. DeJounte Murray was just traded to New Orleans, and Brandon Ingram was not involved in the deal. So I have a ton of questions about that. Like, is New Orleans planning on building around Murray, McCollum, Ingram, and Zion Williamson? Is Ingram still available for a trade? Such a weird NBA offseason it's going to be. It's going to be a wild weekend. I got to be honest. I'm trying to be patient with Daryl Morey and the Sixers, but I have way more excitement for the Flyers offseason for the 76ers than the 76ers, because of the fact that I feel like Philadelphia is so slow rolling this offseason. The fact that they didn't trade the 16th overall pick, the fact that they really haven't made a single move at all yet. They haven't done almost anything at all that gets you. It's not the draft picks were bad, but they don't necessarily get you excited about two role players, right? So for me, I look at the Flyers. I see Mishkov come to America. I see the fact they're moving on from Atkinson. I see the fact they're trying to trade up in the draft. The Flyers look like they are more interested in building a team than the Sixers are. I'm not saying it's true, but I'm saying it's just a feeling, right? It's a vibe that you get. It's a feeling that you get. And so for me, I just look at these two organizations, and I think it's going to be a fascinating conversation moving forward. Who has the better offseason? We're going to find out in a couple months, but it's something I'm keeping a very close eye on moving forward, because as I said, I feel way more excitement and anticipation about the Flyers than the Sixers right now. The Flyers are new and interesting, and they breathe a breath of fresh air into this city. Well, the Sixers, it's just, recycle, repeat, rebuild the roster around Embiid again and again and again and again. And it's like, at what point is this team going to give you something to cheer for in the postseason? And I'm probably even more exasperated because, the Phillies are in these stupid City Connect uniforms, and they're a 0-0 game. They should be beating up on the Marlins. They couldn't beat them yesterday. They should beat them today. It's just whatever. I need to see offense from this Phillies team. Not Garrett Stubbs fouling off a weak grounder to the left side of the field. Sorry, the right side of the field. His right side, the pitcher's left side. Whatever. By the way, 47 million people watched the presidential debate last night. I didn't. I saw the highlights. I do agree with Bryce and DeChambeau. There should be some sort of reality show involving that. That's the only way I'll probably get to watch. I went for a walk last night in Seattle City. Everywhere I went, like every other house had the debate on in their house. And I'm just like, yeah, I watched the Phillies and went for a walk tonight. I'm not watching that live. Oh, my goodness. Hope everyone has a great weekend. I'll be back on Monday. Same time, same bat channel here on 97.3 ESPN. Have a great night, everybody.
Hey, Jen, I just stopped in to say hello. And
for the YouTube only crowd, I appreciate you guys hanging on for a moment. I'm not really a conversation I can get into on 97.3 ESPN. But it's something that there it is right there. For those who don't know, when I'm on YouTube, I get it's like a mirror image. So my right is your left and my left is your right, basically. It's all backwards. But at least for me looking at the screen. But what I was trying to say is that I wanted to hit on LeBron James and his son being drafted situation, because I'm really tired of hearing about how LeBron James' son only got drafted because he's LeBron James' son, and about how nepotism and people, they're crying about something I think is so dumb. Nepotism in sports has been around for longer than any of us have been alive. This goes back centuries, okay? Why do we complain that LeBron's son is getting opportunities because of who his dad is, but we don't say the same thing about other sports? We don't say the same thing about Michael Jordan's son getting a scholarship when he was a mediocre basketball player. We don't say that about broadcasters. Iron Eagle's son, Noah Eagle, has accelerated up the broadcast rankings. Nobody says it about them. Half the political world doesn't seem to care if Trump gives his son a job or Biden gives his son something. Nobody seems to care about those things. So why do we care so much that LeBron James' son is getting this opportunity? Well, I think I know the reason why. And it's because of my own brethren. There are a contingent of people in the media who just hate LeBron and anything to do with the guy. And they just want to criticize him at every single turn. And I think the whole thing is stupid. People got to stop treating LeBron and his son like they're the problem. The problem is the system. The problem is we live in a world which is about who you know, not what you know. And many of us have experienced the reality that no matter how gifted, how talented, how hard of a worker you are, you're not getting the jobs, you're not getting the opportunities other people are because they know the right people, they're in the right circles, their parents, their family members put them in a position to be successful. And frankly, you got to think about it from LeBron James's perspective. People like LeBron James grew up without a father. People like LeBron James grew up without a stable, traditional household. LeBron James had to live part of his life away from his own mother because she couldn't take care of him and he needed to be somewhere else so he could go to a better school to get to where he is now. LeBron James would not be LeBron James if it wasn't for him living with, for all intents and purposes, strangers. Okay? LeBron doesn't want his own kids to go through that. He is very intent on being for what his kids, what no man was ever for him. So for LeBron James, he prioritizes where his wife and his family wants to be for his playing career. He prioritizes what his kids feel and need in life. And he is going to sacrifice his public image, his legacy, how the world perceives him. He is going to sacrifice all of that because for him, he values being a father above everything else. And instead of us applauding that, instead of us saying, good for LeBron having his, moral priorities in check, we criticize him and his son. People forget LeBron James' his son, Bronny James, was a 5-star high school basketball prospect. He had a bad year in college basketball last year, not because he's actually a bad player, but because he had a serious heart condition that kept him away from playing basketball for a while. Now, it was confirmed that the heart condition had nothing to do with any medication that was taken, had nothing to do with any family genetics. It appears to be a fluke situation. But he missed all this time. And while the average player would have just transferred out of USC, gone somewhere else to get more playing time, because LeBron James is LeBron James, he was able to facilitate getting his son an opportunity that other kids don't get to have. And just like Ian Eagle was a factor in his son Noah Eagle getting an opportunity in the broadcasting world, just like how in the political world, there is no George W. Bush as president if his father wasn't George H.W. Bush, right? Just because in the music world, there are people who get opportunities because their parents are whoever they are. Every facet of life, people get opportunities because of who their parents are, because of who their family is. And I applaud LeBron for doing what he thinks is best for his kid. Whether his kid deserves it or not, I don't care anymore. I think that we have spent too much time criticizing people for the wrong things instead of applauding them for the right things. We have spent more time this week in sports media talking about LeBron James and his son getting drafted than we have about anything else. And I think it's pathetic. I think that whatever happens, happens. I'm not going to sit here and be mad at LeBron, his son, or anyone for whatever happens next. I'm just going to let it play out. I am going to judge it 10, 15 years from now when I'm still sitting behind a microphone, whether it's on 97.3 ESPN, here on my YouTube channel, or anywhere else. But for right now, if you were in LeBron's shoes, you probably would have done the same thing. And I think that is the context that we all need to have after LeBron's son getting drafted in the second round of the NBA draft on Thursday afternoon. Thanks for watching the post show on my YouTube channel at Josh Hennig here on YouTube. Like, subscribe, share with your friends and family. And of course, we will catch you on Monday for the next edition of Game Night on, see if I get it right. No, I got it wrong. 97.3 ESPN FM. And right here on my YouTube channel where all of my shows and podcasts get simulcast to. And you can catch all old episodes of the show as well right here on my YouTube channel at Josh Hennig. Have a great night, everybody, and I'll catch you next time.